Hey guys, today I'm going to show you how we are going to very simply texture 3D objects. I'm going to provide three different 3D objects for you guys to mess around with. This is one that was downloaded from Sketchfab by a different artist who I will credit in the description, and I have re-UV'd it, which is the way that you apply textures to the surface, and then textured it to look kind of like WALL-E from that Pixar movie. So I'm going to briefly just show you what goes into a object that has a 3D texture, and then how I'm going to enable you to quickly retexture this without knowing anything about 3D. So first, here's the object. It's actually cut in two so that both sides are exactly the same. You'll see that the text is backwards on this side, but no mind. That's just going to make it easier for you guys to deal with. And as I select it, we've got all these little outlines, which are faces. So each one of those is a surface that can be painted, and this object is made up of many different little faces, but what it combines into is sort of a coloring book like this. So this is the two-dimensional version of all of those textures, and you can see these outlines are all over the place, and wherever there's a little bit of texture here, you can find a place on the object where it's textured. Okay? So this can be a little bit disconcerting if you've never done it before, because certain places wrap around the object, like this is the top, the corner and the side of the primary top part of the gun here, but edges like these ones don't necessarily attach. So this brown part is over here, but the end of the yellow is right here. So if you wanted some little splatter or texture to go across there, you'd have to be very careful about it, and it might take a lot of trial and error. And so it's best to be able to view the 3D object and your texture at the same time when you're working on texturing a 3D object. One way to do that is to get a program that allows you to paint directly in it. Maya will allow that, but it doesn't have the best painting interface. Blender is another good option, and then there are other specialty programs like 3D Coat that allow that natively as well. But since this is not a 3D course, I'm going to show you guys how to paint over top of a previously saved texture, modify it, just save it, and then reload it so that you can see those changes in a viewer. So to that end, I have these things. These materials and objects are going to be in the Google Drive folder for the class, and there's instructions if you forget right here in this text document. If I open that up there, it says here's the URL for the 3D viewer site. Use a Chrome browser. We did test this on Edge and it didn't work, and you must drag all of the files at the same time within each of the folders. So there's an object file, a material file, and a PNG, and that's the one that you'll be saving over. If you save the PNG image by painting and resaving it, then drag all three, it should update. Okay? So let me show you, and I'll go ahead and do the gun. So here I've got boltgun.mtl.obj and texture, and then here is the site. So if I just grab all three of these, drag them in, then here's that gun. And it oftentimes orients itself a little bit strangely, but just left click and drag around in the screen and you should be able to look at it from whatever angle you want. If you middle mouse click in, or let me see, right click mouse and click in, you can slide this around, and then rolling your mouse wheel you can zoom in and out. So with a combination of all three of those, you should be able to look at whatever part you want to. Okay. I'm not sure what double clicking does. Sometimes double clicking lets you refocus your camera. I guess it doesn't do anything in this case, but that's okay. This should be good enough to be able to see what's going on all over this object. Okay, so if we, and by the way, you don't have to worry about any of this stuff on the left. The stuff on the top, if you want to click these buttons, it will move the camera to a position like directly above or to the side or below, and then you can rotate from there, and sometimes that will fix the orientation for you. Okay? So if you want to edit this texture, then I've got Krita open, and it has the texture that is being used, so it's open directly from that folder. And so I'm just going to, with like a bright red color, draw right over the top of this thing. Let's just say some anti-environmentalist person got a hold of this thing. They don't like that, and so they're just going to cross that out. Now I'm going to resave this. So File, Save As, and I want to do it right in the same directory over the exact same file. So this is important because it needs to have the same name. So the Boltgun texture.png, the exact same name. If you want to save the original version of this, just copy and paste it on your desktop or something like that before you start doing this. But do save it in the same location because it's going to be easy to grab all three and drag them again. I'm going to hit save. Do you want to replace it? Yes, I do. There we go. And I'll minimize. So now this won't look any different until I redrag these three things. Krita creates this little temporary file here. Just ignore that and drag the original three. There we go. So now my texture has a little red X on it, and I can see that change taking place. So this would be a pretty easy way for you to go back and forth, do a little bit of painting and save, check out the changes on the 3D model, and eventually you can get a very nice, sophisticated looking texture out of that. And so I'm going to have to change that back later, but I can also show you what the other two look like. And by the way, the source files folder just has my original Maya files and the UV unwrapped image by itself, which if you're not familiar with these, first of all, if you're not familiar with 3D, don't touch any of this. But if you're not familiar with unwraps, this is a white only image with transparency, so it looks invisible when you first load it, and you probably have to put a texture behind it before you'll see anything. So let's look at the grave, which is the simplest of the three. There you go. Each one of these textures has the UVs, which is all of the edges showing, and I've also colored each one of the islands a flat color so that you can tell the difference between front, back, left, and right. So if you load the grave texture PNG into Photoshop or Krita or whatever your paint program, you'll be able to find blue and know that that's the front, or red and know that that's the back, or purple, etc. Okay, so here's a little simple gravestone, which is, I think, the easiest of the three to do, and the door, which is a little bit complicated. Okay, there we go. So here's a door where we've got a big wooden surface, a few hinges, and then these stones. The stones are special on this one because there's only one space for a stone to be textured, but all of these are sharing space. So if you did a green face, by the way, all of these green faces would be textured the same. Same thing with a blue face, or this brown face, or purple face. And you can see that as I rotate around, they're all kind of facing different directions to give some interest to it. But you only have to do the stone one time, so it's not as much work as it looks. And there's a little cute skull on the top here that you could texture if you wanted to. So I would say in order of difficulty, the grave is the easiest, the door is the next one, and the gun is probably the hardest. Even though the gun doesn't look hard, it's the way that I unwrapped it that makes it more difficult because there's a lot of little pieces all over the place. So make your choice, whichever one of the three that you want to do. You only have to do one for the assignment. And in the next video, I'll be demonstrating how to directly start texturing one of these objects.